Palmetto Talk Live, and we are joined by the Attorney General in the new studio. How's it going, Mr. Wilson?
It's great. Am I your first guest in the
Well,
new studio?
you're the first person who holds a statewide position. We had
Okay.
James Teeple in earlier this week,
Okay.
and we've had a couple of candidates running for city council and state house and things like that. But you're the biggest one for sure right now.
Well, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
I definitely appreciate it. We've got a lot to talk about. It seems that this governor's race is becoming a lot about judicial reform, a lot about the way that the judicial system kind of the flaws or the things of that nature, which is really interesting to me because you're the attorney general,
Right.
and you're running here, and you've seen this from a firsthand perspective. A lot of people have been saying that they would like to. There are different ways to fix the judicial system.
Yeah.
We have, and we were talking just a touch about this right before we came on, but we have the electing judges, which I'll tell you, a few years ago when I was first getting involved,
You mean popular election?
a popular election by the people, right? When I was first getting involved, that seemed like a good idea to me on the surface. And then the more that I looked into that model, it became very clear that there are a lot of problems with electing judges, but I see a lot of our followers and just a lot of people, a lot of activists on the Republican side and on the Democrat side will argue in favor of electing judges in a popular vote. But there are a number of issues with that, right? Can we talk about that for a minute?
Well, and we can come back to that.
Okay.
I'd like to start kind of broadly.
Okay.
First off, you say the judicial reform has become a major component of this governor's race. I want to say that I've been advocating for judicial reform for over a dozen years. I've been talking about, I've written op-eds on this, not just in the last year or two or three, but I'm going back to like 2012, 13, 14. Like I was advocating for this. And so we're going to get to the popular election question,
Sure.
but I want people to understand how we do it here in South Carolina. And there are pros and cons. As long as you have human beings involved in the election of that branch of government, it's going to be flawed.
Yeah.
How do you mitigate that flaw? And I believe when the three branches of government all have equal checks and balances on each other, that is the best. That is what our founders intended for our federal model of governance.
Okay.
And I would like to borrow that for our state level of governance, when there are equal checks and balances. So obviously the federal model, the president nominates one person, they go over, there's hearings, and then the Senate votes up or down on that person. It's the cleanest way. That is the model I prefer for the state of South Carolina.
Okay.
It's the cleanest way to do it because everyone votes for and against the governor, and everyone gets to vote for their House member and their senator who would be voting for it. So they have direct accountability to the governor who nominates and to the legislatures who vote for and against.
And it's most separate as well.
It is most separate, yes, and there's equal checks. The General Assembly can only vote on the nominees coming to them, and of course the governor can't stop. If the legislature, if the governor sends someone that the legislature doesn't like, the governor has to go back. And if the governor and the legislature are putting bad nominees on the bench or that are not doing their jobs correctly, people have multiple folks to hold accountable. The single governor in the state who appoints or nominates the judges and their House members and senators.
Right.
And of course these aren't lifetime appointments like at the federal level. They're for 6 years for circuit judges or 10 years, say, for a Supreme Court justice.
Okay.
That is the model I like the best. In South Carolina, the only way we could do that is if you amended the state constitution.
Which is very difficult.
It is very difficult, and it could get, because it's like opening up a hood of a car. The gremlins get in there, and the good things you want to do might have a bunch of bad stuff shoved in it.
Yeah.
It's very long. It could be a very difficult process. So if you wanted to have something similar to a federal model without opening up the state constitution, what I tell folks is the state constitution requires we have a judicial merit selection commission. Okay, and then it says that the JMSC, for short, nominates and the General Assembly shall vote on those candidates. But it's silent as to where the JMSC is and who comprises and who composes it, right?
Okay.
Who the members are.
That was my question. Yeah. So it doesn't. It just says there must be a judicial merit selection committee.
It must exist, and it nominates and the General Assembly votes.
But it doesn't say anything about who selects that committee. It doesn't say anything about who comprises it. Nothing.
Correct.
That's just
so what we could do is, if you wanted to stop short of the extraordinary step of doing a constitutional amendment, which could ultimately end up with a bad result because bad things could get done in there or something, or it would take very, very long, we could statutorily reform it. Now, here's what I would propose. And here's, first off, we're talking about the what to do. I want the people to understand why are we doing it, because the judicial branch of government is very powerful. You want judicial independence. You want judges that are thoughtful and measured and apply the rules the way they were intended by the writers, which is the General Assembly and the governor, right, who signs off on them. But you can have judges who, once they get in there, they could not apply the laws the way they were intended. They could interpret the laws the exact opposite of the other two branches, and there's no accountability mechanism until they come up for a vote in 6 to 10 years. Right? And so you want equal checks, and you want judges that are going to protect victim rights and hold violent criminals accountable and not let repeat violent offenders out, which some judges have done.
Yes.
You don't want judges that are going to have bad judicial temperament. You don't want judges that are going to ruin businesses, So how judges rule on laws is very important to the business community, to the victims community, to the law enforcement community. That is why, my friends, South Carolina, you need to care about how the judges are elected. It is very important for a safe state. Now, back to the original question.
right.
Okay, so I have proposed for over 10 years that the JMSC should be under the governor. Okay, I have always advocated. Now, when I advocated for it a couple of years ago, the General Assembly did some reforms, which I liked, but they stopped short of what I wanted. And I'm grateful that they took up the cause, but the reforms were not far enough.
What kind of reforms are we talking about there?
So originally, the JMSC had 10 members on it.
Okay.
All 10 members were selected by 3 members of the General Assembly. Of the 10 members, right, 6 were sitting members of the legislature.
Okay.
4 were non-members of the legislature. But all 10 members were appointed by the legislature.
Right.
So if you had 5, 6, 7, 10 people that applied to be a family court judge, a circuit judge, and a court of appeals judge, or a Supreme Court justice, they would apply to the JMSC. And then the JMSC would pick 3 most qualified, right? So you might have 10 people applying, but the legislatively controlled JMSC would select the 3 most qualified. They could eliminate everyone else except the 3 that they want, and then send those 3 to be voted on by the General Assembly. There was a fear and a belief by a lot of people that what was happening is, and I'm not saying this did happen.
Sure.
But the perception was that, you might have cases where they have the one that they want and then 2 throwaway candidates. Right. Now, I'm not saying that happened. I've seen 3 qualified people come out who had all been good. I've seen that too. But the point is they would screen out everyone else. And so, and of course, all 10 members. So the legislature controlled the vetting mechanism, the selecting mechanism, the nominating mechanism, and the election mechanism.
From start to finish.
From start to finish.
They have complete control over the whole
And then
process.
they basically control the budget of the judiciary.
Right.
Yeah, the governor can veto, but they override gubernatorial vetoes all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the executive branch had very little say over the selection of judges. Now, what the General Assembly did about a year and a half ago, and it just went into effect on July 1 of this year, okay, is that 10-member committee or commission is now a 12-member commission. Okay? And you have the governor gets 4, the House gets 4, the Senate gets 4. Okay? The House of the 4 selected House of the 4 people appointed by the House, 3 of them are sitting House members. Of the 4 from the Senate, 3 are senators.
That's the way it's worked out, or is that statutorial?
That's statutory.
Okay.
That's what they did. They changed the statute of the makeup of the JMSC.
Gotcha.
So now the JMSC still has 6 members of the General Assembly on it. It has an additional 2 members, House and Senate appointed, who are still appointed by the legislature. And the governor gets 4 appointments. So the governor gets 4, the General Assembly gets 8.
Right.
Okay? They removed the cap of 3. Remember I said earlier that they would only spit out 3 people?
Right, right.
Well, now they will allow 6.
Okay.
Okay, so they've opened the aperture, meaning they have to let more qualified candidates in. And some would argue we never get more than 4, 5, 6, 7 people, right? They would say we've opened it, and they don't want to have a situation when there's 20 people and a full, you want to have some
probably a valid criticism.
It's valid, but they moved it up to 6. They also made it so that while all the hearings were public, they weren't all televised. So now you can sit in your home down here in Charleston or in Oconee County or in Beaufort or Myrtle Beach, whatever, and you can watch online the vetting of all the judicial candidates online.
You can get that app. Yep, just the SC Legislature
Or you go
app.
online and go to General Assembly, and you can screen it.
Yeah.
Those are the big things that they did, and those were a step in the right direction. Remember, nothing had been done in over 30 years.
Yeah.
I started barnstorming the state, talking to the General Assembly. I met with the leadership. They listened to me. Obviously, we had a lot of opposition in the General Assembly to any reform. They were able to do what they did. I still believed it wasn't enough, but again, if you have to, before you can get on home base, you got to get on first base.
Well, that's right.
We got on first base, but we're not at home plate yet. And so what I would like to do is I would like to continue to push for more judicial reform. And there's a lot of folks out there that have a lot of ideas. I think what Doge SC put out was really good. It's actually my
And
plan.
very similar, that's what I
Doja-
was going to say, is very similar to what you have. I mean, like you said, you've written op-eds about this for years. You've done a lot of work in that arena, saying this is how we can fix it, and it does seem very, very similar to what you have been proposing for so long.
I don't know that they knew that they were putting my plan out there.
It's just, I think maybe
But
it's a good idea. It's just,
Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. So I am very flattered about their plan because it's what I've been arguing for. But I support their plan.
Of course.
I would like to beef up their plan a little bit or add to it. I mean, so basically what their plan is and what I support, what I want to do in my plan is the JMSC, right, has to exist in the Constitution.
Right.
It should be all the staff come up under the governor. All the commission members are appointed by the governor, so the governor has complete control over all the folks who are vetting the candidates and all the folks who are nominating the candidates. So it's kind of like the federal model, except instead of the president picking one person or the governor picking one person, the governor's JMSC would receive all the applications,
Right.
would vet them all, and put out the candidates to the General Assembly to vote on, up or down.
the governor picks the people who pick the people.
Yes, the governor. That's the most succinct. The governor picks the people, and the staff who help those people vet those people, and then give them out to the General Assembly.
Would you, to that end, because like we were saying, the way it is now with the reform getting on first base, as you said, the House has 3 members of the House on, the Senate has 3 members of the Senate on the JMSC. When the governor picks, do you think that there should be, if we get to that proposal, do you think
Meaning the JMSC comes completely to the
from the governor,
Yeah.
should there be a requirement for a couple of members from the House and a couple of members from the Senate to be on it, or should it just be whoever?
Look, my preference should be the governor selects who they want to be on the JMSC.
Okay.
And here's the reason why. Under the old system of the JMSC, power was consolidated under the law and the Constitution under one branch of government, the legislative.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
But accountability for that power was dispersed amongst 170 people. There's 46 senators, 124 House members. So here in this community, if you didn't like a candidate that your House member or senator voted for or against, you can vote for or against your House member and your senator. But there's 168 other people. So the power is in that branch of government, but you can only vote for 2 people in that branch of government.
Right.
We all vote for and against the governor. So if the governor is selecting the wrong kind of people who are vetting and nominating the judicial candidates, everybody gets to go to the governor and say, your system for scrubbing these list of candidates is deeply flawed, governor. And people can, the governor is one person we all vote for and against. Right?
Everyone in the
And that is the accountability prong I'm talking about. Power should be dispersed amongst all 3 branches. I don't want the executive branch to be more influential than the legislative or the judicial, but I don't want either of them to be more influential than the executive.
And that's something that is almost unique in South Carolina, where the legislative, or it's very rare in the United States, where the legislative branch truly does have almost all of the power, not just in the judicial, but in so many other things. Why is that?
So we are a strong legislative state, and that goes back to the history of South Carolina. I think the last Constitution was ratified in 1895, which, as you know, 30 years earlier, we had that little kerfuffle with our friends up north, right? And so we were coming out of Reconstruction, and if you remember, the South had been taken into receivership by the North. You had, basically when we were kind of left to our own devices, we passed a constitution that basically enshrined power in the legislative branch because they never wanted a strong governor because they had northern people governing them for 30 years.
Okay.
And that is kind of my understanding of history.
I see.
I'm sure there's more to it than that, but that is my oversimplified
Of course.
version. And so we became a legislatively dominant state. And I think we've always been a legislatively strong state, even before the Civil War, but I think that really enshrined it. It put it in concrete. And so that is why they wanted a weaker governor. And again, I don't want a governor that is stronger than the legislature or an attorney general.
Right.
And I don't want that kind of power for myself as the attorney general. People think that I have the power. I get criticized every day for things I don't have the power to do.
For things judges do.
Things that judges do, or things. It's a big government, and I have some power to do a lot of a number of things, but I don't have omnipotent power like they think I do, and they want to blame me for everything. But moving on, in addition to what you and I just talked about, I would like to do a couple of additional things. In addition to bringing the JMSC under the governor, and giving the governor complete control over the nominating process, and the legislature should have complete autonomy over the election and the confirmation process, and as well as they propose the budget.
Of
right?
course, yeah.
So there's that, and the governor signs the budget. I would like to do a couple of other things. I would like to implement what's called a retention election or a vote of no confidence election. So when a circuit judge, one thing that we always want to maintain, we want the judiciary to be independent. I don't want people on the right or the left to exert undue pressure on judges. I think judges need to be held accountable when they run off the road from applying the laws of the way it is written.
But they need to be independent.
They need to be independent.
Do what they believe is the right thing.
And when people don't like a judge's decision, they automatically assume the judge is corrupt or the judge is not doing something right. Now, I'm not saying we haven't had corrupt judges or judges that refuse to obey the rule of law. We have.
Right, of course.
But not every bad decision or judicial decision. That's what elections are for.
Yeah, and somebody's always going to be mad when
Right.
a judge makes a decision. Somebody's always going to be upset.
So we want to inoculate them some, but there
Sure.
still needs to be an accountability prong there. Okay. So I would argue that, if a circuit judge gets elected for 6 years, and a Supreme Court justice is elected for 10 years, in year 1, 2, and 3, they're probably not thinking a lot about reelection. And you could have judges that are doing things, I'm not even talking about doing things that are interpreting the law wrong. I'm saying they're refusing to follow the law. Like there's a law that says you can't give a bond, you can't bond out a repeat violent offender, someone who's committed a violent crime and is back in front of you.
Right.
Judges, magistrates are continuing to bond these people out. The law doesn't allow that. You have judges that are not enforcing mandatory minimum sentences. You have judges that, in the past, I'm not saying anyone right now that I'm aware of, but let's say if they're showing up habitually drunk, or they're being abusive to their staff, or they have bad temperament they are violating the judicial candidates, the code of ethics, right? They may not be criminal, but they are doing things that are bad. I'm not just saying making bad decisions. There needs to be a way to hold them accountable in the middle of their term. Okay. And so I would like to have a vehicle for them to call for a vote of no confidence.
Who would make that call?
There's several ways to do it.
Okay.
So one way would be if let's say a judge is habitually refusing to keep violent offenders in jail.
Okay, yes, yeah.
Or a judge is showing up habitually drunk and being abusive, and it's
I
documented.
feel like those are two different things, though, right?
Two different things.
Yeah.
But and again, we would have to put guardrails on it. We'd have
Sure.
to define it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I want judges to have predictability as well as people wanting them out of office to have predictability. You got to have the rules defined.
Right.
And we can define that through the negotiation process, but they violate whatever canon. One plan would be the governor calls for a retention vote. Judge so-and-so, you have refused to keep these violent criminals in jail habitually over and over and over. I'm calling you to go to the General Assembly for a vote of no confidence. They would go before the joint committees of the Judiciary, the House and Senate, probable cause hearing, and then by 50% or a two-thirds vote, however you want to do it, they could be removed from office early.
By the committee, as opposed to
General Assembly.
by the General Assembly.
I would say a committee would want to evaluate the evidence, right?
and then say whether
and then give
or
a
not
report to the General Assembly, and then the General Assembly would have time to hear from their constituents, and then they would have a vote to remove that judge early, right?
Yes,
The prospect of being called in for violating the judicial candidates or rules of professional responsibility or whatever it is. Now, this isn't an election. This isn't a process. Let's say a judge votes wrong on an abortion law, or a judge votes wrong on they not vote, but they interpret the law incorrectly.
Yeah.
They come up for re-election in 6 or 10 years.
Right.
Hold them accountable then. I'm talking about when they are violating the law.
Right, violating the law, code of ethics, like egregious missteps. We're not talking about, oh, we don't like what they did.
Right. And
absolutely.
give the governor to call them to Columbia to have to stand for that. That right there would be one way to do it. Another way to do it would be every judge at the midpoint of their tenure comes up for a retention vote. The general, means they just come up there. No one's running against them. They just come up, and the General Assembly says, "We don't have any complaints against you. We decided
It's a yes or no.
Yes or no. You're back in." And there's a lot more to it than that, but those are retention elections in the middle of a term are a way just to remind the judges when you get it. I mean, it's a long term. It's not a lifetime appointment, but 6 years and 10 years is a long time.
You can forget a lot in the last year that happened in the 5 prior.
But at year 3 and year 5, depending on how many years you're in, you know that you got a retention, so it would keep them, on their toes. But again, those would be things I would be interested in. Another thing I would be interested in doing is maybe giving the governor 16 at-large judicial nominations.
Okay. So
one for every.
Explain what you mean when you say at-large, because I don't know that people.
I shouldn't say at-large. Give the governor 16 judicial nominations that they would. In other words, the way under my plan or my idea is, you would have, 5 people could apply for an opening, a vacancy on the Court of Appeals or the Supreme Court or a circuit court judge, right? Okay. These positions, people wouldn't apply for them. The governor would say, "Corey, you're a great lawyer. You're a constitutional scholar. I want to put you in the circuit court, and I'm going to appoint you to the First Circuit. And you go to the JMSC would still have to vet you, right? For make sure that you're qualified and all that stuff, and then spit you out. You don't have to compete against other candidates, and then you go for a vote of and the governor would get 16 of those. Now, you may not apportion them one per circuit. There are rural circuits that have 1 resident judges and urban circuits that have 5 resident judges.
Right, and there are some rural areas that have massive
backlogs.
And that also, when they have those massive backlogs, what happens a lot of the time is either the prosecutors try and just get a lot of those off the books by doing deals that aren't.
Let's say you have a circuit like the 2 or 3 counties where there's a massive. It's rural. The governor's judges that the governor appointed and were confirmed by the General Assembly, because they still need to be confirmed under the Constitution. The General Assembly should be able to kick him out if they don't like him.
Right.
The governor can send a new one. But let's say we give him 16 extra judges. And if the number needs to be smaller or bigger, that's all negotiable. But you could put 4 or 5 judges in one circuit to hold multiple terms of court. And by the way, I've already got a violent crimes case reduction unit that's traveling the state to help rural circuits, sheriffs and solicitors who have murderers and rapists and arsonists and armed robbers and violent criminals sitting in the county jail waiting for a court date that won't come for years because we don't have enough terms of court.
And those jails are overcrowded right now.
They're overcrowded.
Yes, absolutely.
The county resources, rural counties need help. And urban counties need help too. But that could be used to move the backlog, to get the cases moved, because the victims of these crimes deserve justice as much as the defendants deserve to need to be adjudicated.
Right.
But I would offer that and let's fund. Let's fund that. Another thing I would advocate for is making sure, so people have to understand the recent case of that wonderful young woman, Logan Federico.
Yes.
Tragically murdered. And this is a guy that had been charged 30-something times, had been let out 24 times, In
2 states.
In multiple states. And that has brought a lot of attention to our system. But there's one thing people need to know. There are several ways that a person gets let out of jail or doesn't go to prison when they should. It could be that the judges and or the prosecutors are making bad decisions because their judicial philosophy or their prosecutor philosophy are bad.
Or due diligence.
Or they're not good at their jobs. Right. We see this all over the country.
Yes.
Another, George Soros-funded prosecutors in other states, they want to send, health care workers and mental health care people to try to talk to these violent criminals because it's society's fault, not their fault. But it could be that the people in the criminal justice system are bad at their jobs. They're making bad decisions because they have a bad philosophy of governance and judicial and prosecution, right? Or it could be that they're making bad decisions because the data coming into the system is flawed, and they're making decisions on bad, flawed data. If they had the right data, the right information, they would make good decisions. So when you see a judge doing something or a prosecutor doing something, and you don't like the outcome, I would encourage people, go understand what's happening. And I'm not saying that we don't know what happened in the Federico case. I'm doing an internal audit of that.
Okay.
But generally, what people need to understand is the judge may have made a bad decision because the judge made a decision based on the information they were given.
Right.
Or the prosecutor made a bad recommendation to the judge, or maybe the prosecutor didn't make a recommendation because of the bad information that they had, right? Or maybe they just made mistakes. That is how it could happen. So, for instance, if someone goes, let's say if you get arrested for a crime, they fingerprint you,
Right.
okay, and you go into the system, and the charges go into the system. If you are direct indicted, meaning there is no warrant for your arrest, you get prosecuted by the grand jury, right?
Right. Okay.
And for people to understand that there's two different ways you can get arrested: with a warrant, or you get direct indicted. You don't get fingerprinted if it's direct presentment to a grand jury. Or let's say you're sitting in jail. I come and arrest you for armed robbery. You're sitting in jail, and then 5 more warrants for other violent cases, for other 5 more armed robberies come in. But you're already in jail. You're not getting reprocessed. Your fingerprints aren't getting captured. So all those other charges aren't getting populated. All the counties, remember, there's 46 counties, 16 judicial circuits. You've got the department, or you got the judiciary department. You got multiple law enforcement agencies at state levels. You got hundreds of municipalities, police departments, 46 sheriffs, solicitors.
Yes.
A lot of systems, daisy chained. They all get their information from NCIS, not NCIS, I can't even say that.
NCIC?
NCIC.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of the show. They're getting it from the federal, the FBI run systems. But here's the thing: garbage in, garbage out.
Right.
So, there are plans out there that I'm very supportive of. Biometrics. Once you get their thumbprint in the criminal justice system, then every jail, you just use biometrics to trap them, and you make sure you capture all the data.
And also because I think it's the same way county to county to county. My mom was a paralegal. She retired at like 65 as a paralegal, did it her whole life. In order to find, if somebody's arrested in Charleston, you have to go to Charleston's website to see that, and then you have to go to a different county. And then they were arrested in Aiken, you have to go to that website to see that. As a even if they're a criminal defense attorney, like you have to go to each of these sites independently, as opposed to going to a central location. And if there is a central location, it misses a lot of these things. So when somebody's arrested in multiple counties, even that can slip through the cracks.
Yes.
When you're talking about prosecuting them for multiple violent crimes and things.
What I'm trying to do, Corey, is to make recommendations to the General Assembly. I'm working with the legislature. I'm talking to executive branch law enforcement agencies about having a system. Where are the gaps where information's falling through? And then the people in the system, the judges, the prosecutors, defense attorneys, all of us making decisions, need to be held accountable for those decisions. But we need to make sure that the data is not flawed.
Yes.
Now, I also need to make sure I get attacked every single day by people from this area.
I've seen it.
And they say horrible, hateful, malevolent, evil things that are not true. Mm-hmm. And either they know they're not true, and it's intentionally meant to mislead people, or they're saying things because they're completely ignorant. I think it's a combination of both. But what I will say is this. People need to understand the criminal justice system. The cops catch the bad guys. The prosecutors move those cases through the criminal justice system. Our job is to get the case in front of judges. Judges make the decisions. Right. When someone says Alan Wilson puts a child predator in prison for 1 day, that's not how it works.
Right.
Right. We charge, we indict, we prosecute, we prosecute by getting to the court. The decisions are made there and the judges have the information. And remember, there are thousands and thousands of charges, not just child exploitation cases. Yeah. We're talking murder, we're talking other violent crimes, going through a very small hose of the criminal justice system. And so there is so much. It is a very complex and complicated system, and anybody can attack it. When someone says, like, if you get charged in one case, you might get charged with 50 charges in one case. 20 charges might be dismissed because the initial person making the charge was a police officer who's not a lawyer, not a prosecutor, and maybe mischarged. Maybe there's not evidence to support that charge, or maybe charges get consolidated in an indictment. The information's there. It doesn't drop the amount of time the person's going to get in jail, right? You're not going to stack them. That's not how the system works. But like there are people out there that have attacked my office. They attack other prosecutors because they say Alan Wilson personally dismissed, you know, 90% of charges.
I think
that's not cases.
That's right, and I think this is the best, one of the best examples of this that will help people understand that process a little bit more. Something that's been in the news, of course, with the R.J. May. He was charged with 10 federal. This is federal, but charged with 10 counts. Pled guilty to 5 of them. Now, if somebody is trying to be a little less than honest, but still saying the truth, they would say 50% of his charges were dropped. So they're only prosecuting 50% of the cases against him.
Yeah,
right. That's
you
the
can't
way
put people in jail for 300 years. They're going to die.
That's true,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's
if you have 10 charges and you eventually 5 are dropped and you still have 5 left, that doesn't mean that you lost 50% of your cases. You know what I'm saying?
or that he's getting 50% less time.
Right.
And so,
it's just not how it
and
works.
again, the people who are attacking me, people who have never been in the criminal justice system, people who have never stepped foot in a courtroom unless they were being sued or something.
Not on that side.
Right? They are very quick to attack when they're really clueless. But like you just said, with R.J. May, who was prosecuted by the feds, if 50% of his counts are dropped, that doesn't mean he's getting 50% less time.
Right.
The judge knows about that, and the sentencing guidelines, those facts are factored into the sentence. There are people out there, let's say if you get 10 felonies that carry up to 10 years, okay?
Okay, that's 100 years.
0 to 100 years is what you could get. You were never going to get 100 years. You were never going to get 50 years, right? It depends on your prior record.
You would have most likely gotten 10. They wouldn't do them consecutively.
It depends.
Well, of course, yes.
It depends. Sometimes you can get consecutive sentences, but usually, sometimes the judge will say, if you guys are doing 10 indictments, that means I got to do 10 sentencing sheets, which takes, I've got only so many hours in a day to hear all the other cases that are lined up. Roll them up into one indictment or roll them up into 2 indictments. This is the amount of time I'm going to give. I'm going to put the jail for 15 years. Whether you do 10 indictments or whether you do 1 indictment, he's getting he's getting the same time.
Yeah.
Right. I'm going to give him the same amount of time. And so it doesn't. A lot of people out there who don't understand that they think that we're being weak on crime, but again. We are going hard, and the prosecutors and the sheriffs I'm talking to, they are going as hard as they can. By the way,
how many sheriffs do you have that have endorsed you so far? Do you remember the number?
75% of the Republican sheriffs in South Carolina, which is half of all sheriffs, 23.
Okay, 23 sheriffs have
all 5 sheriffs in the 1st Congressional District.
Well, that's right. That's what Beaufort County,
Colleton,
Berkeley, Colleton,
Dorchester,
and Charleston County. Yeah. Those are pretty big endorsements. I know a few of those guys. They're good guys.
They're great guys, and they bust their butts and they're working hard. Yeah. And I taught your solicitor down here a lot. I know she's working hard. She gets attacked unfairly, in my opinion. I see solicitors getting attacked all the time. But at the end of the day, I want a system of government, a criminal justice system that holds violent criminals accountable, brings victims justice as quickly as possible, is transparent, and the people feel like they have a say in the process. But you don't want it to be over-gunked up. You don't want it to be overcomplicated. And again, you've only got 365 days a year. You have basically 40 terms of court a year. You got weeks off.
Right.
Judges have to have chamber weeks where they get ready for the trial weeks. They have to have weeks where they do their sign off on their orders, studying, prepping. Prosecutors have to prep cases, so not every week of the year can be a trial term.
Sure.
And then you've got civil court, you got criminal court. So it is very difficult.
Yeah.
That is one of the reasons I wanted to give the governor the ability to give additional judges that could basically muster on rural areas or urban areas that have major backlogs and need assistance.
I think that's a great idea, actually. I mean, I really do. Before we go, I know you got stuff to do, but is there anything else that you're hearing from the people that you think is a major issue this gubernatorial election? I know you're all over the place talking to people.
I'm talking to business leaders. I'm talking to local activists. I'm talking to moms and dads. Obviously, we talk a lot about parental rights, infrastructure.
Yeah.
I'm using the term Doge, but like there's a lot of inefficiencies in government, Corey.
Yes, I know.
And I tell people, one of the reasons that I decided to run for governor is the governor has the ability to bring lawsuits to stop bad behavior that's violative of civil law.
Okay.
And it has the power to bring indictments against criminal behavior. There's violations of criminal law. But you cannot sue and indict your way out of just plain bad government. Right? I have seen fraud, waste, and abuse. I've seen waste and abuse in government that is not criminal. It's just people bad at their jobs with antiquated, outdated systems, lack of technology, lack of motivation, bad actors in government. They're not breaking a law. So you can't sue or indict your way out of it. But you can put the right personnel into place, you can put the right policies in place, and you can advocate for reforms that will make government better. One of those is having an Office of the Inspector General that is more proactive on going out and looking for fraud, waste, and abuse in local government.
That would be nice.
We give all this money to local school districts, right? Federal money passes through us, state money goes from us to local school districts. I want random audits of how that money is being spent, how the policies and laws are being passed, are being implemented. Local municipal governments, local county governments, state agencies, there needs to be more transparency. And think about this. If you see a drunk driver, like how do law enforcement, how do they catch drunk drivers or reckless drivers or speeding drivers? Do they sit back in a building somewhere waiting on someone to report it, or are they just randomly patrolling the streets?
That's a very good way to put it. You've got to go out and find it.
Random audits.
Got to go out and look for it.
If you're running a local
that would be
state agency or a local school district office that receives state appropriated funds, you should run your business as if at any given moment people could walk in and audit you.
Yeah,
randomly.
you should. Yeah,
randomly.
Yeah. Not letting you know 2 months in advance. Hey, we might be stopping by.
No, they just walk in, and doing random audits. And then if you're doing something criminal, you be prosecuted. If you're doing something that is bad efficiency, then the voters know about it because all that report, and the voters and the legislature will know. They know not to give you money or to take money away from you or take you into receivership.
Yeah.
But we want to empower local governments under home rule to make decisions. We want to make sure they're adequately funded and that they have the resources to meet the basic needs of their constituencies. But we want to make sure, because there's a lot of local governments in urban and rural areas. They complain that money's not getting to intended purposes, but when you go look into them, they're hemorrhaging, they're leaking money all over the floor because they're not efficient with it.
That's very true. We've seen a lot of that actually in school districts, and it's not it's like I've heard you say before. It's not malice when this happens. A lot of the time, it's just a lack of knowledge of where the money's going. A lot of compartmentalization. A lot of the people who should know on the districts don't know where the money is going to this nonprofit that's been defunct for 4 years, or that one that isn't doing what they said they were going to do. And it just gets into this cycle like that. But an audit, not only would it stop the criminal aspect if there is criminality going on, but it could also help them become more efficient in using the money in ways that could actually help. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Especially in the school
And remember,
districts.
there's a difference between bad government and corrupt government.
Yes, there is.
People conflate them all the time. Something I see government doing, I don't like, it's corrupt. Well, no, not necessarily. I mean, bad government can be corrupt government, but it can also just be bad government.
Right.
Being a knucklehead, being an idiot, being in office, or being a bureaucrat who is retired 5 years early, and you're just collecting a check and not doing your job, or you don't understand the rules of your job, or you're just bad at it.
Yep.
And again, there's got to be a different vehicle for moving those people out and implementing good policies.
Well, if you win, it's going to be a hard-fought battle, man. We got June. That's what? We're still 8 months away.
Ish, 7.5.
7.5 months away. Yeah, yeah. Nobody's counting. I think that you and a few of the others that are running are doing a very good job of staying above the fray and talking about your vision as opposed to how everyone else is just trash. I appreciate that a lot. You don't see that often in South Carolina. So,
well, I can give you. I don't know how much time we have.
Yeah, as much time as you want.
But I can give you an anecdote.
Sure.
That will demonstrate how I would govern compared to others. Okay. And look, I'm a flawed human being, and I tell people all the time, if you're looking for a perfect candidate, a perfect governor, I'm not that guy. That person doesn't exist. Okay, but I try to get it right. So let me give you an example. In the weeks following the Charlie Kirk assassination, there were some professors up at Clemson University who were saying some hateful, horrible, evil things, right? Mm-hmm. And there was a call on Clemson, and Clemson was just getting shelled. They were getting shellacked, right, because they weren't moving. And candidates running for governor were calling on them to be defunded. That was the first go-to. Of course, I'm thinking there's a lot of good people at Clemson, a lot of good students, right, that you're punishing by just saying that. So I picked up the phone. I called the leadership of Clemson. I asked them what was going on. And they said, well, there's a law in the books that says if we fire someone, and this, they sent me the law. They said, we want to terminate these professors, but we could go to jail for 2 years. There's a law that says if you terminate someone for exercising their political speech, it's a 2-year misdemeanor. And I said, well, hold on, let me go look into this. So I went and I called the leadership of the General Assembly, sat down with them over the phone on a weekend, and said, look, they're worried that they'll get prosecuted, and they're also worried that they'll get sued by the professors. The legislators are telling me, we'll fund that. If they fire the professors, if they get sued for violation of contract law or they allege to have violated someone's civil rights,
The legislator saying that they'll
we will fund the lawsuit. In other words, we will help defend Clemson with the attorneys needed to defend them. But I needed to take an action on the criminal law. So I called the leadership of Clemson back. I said, y'all are having a vote in the Board of Trustees on Monday afternoon. You're going to have a letter you can take to them that says no one will prosecute you in the state. I'm the chief prosecutor of the state. I'm removing that as a reason. So they were able to fire the professors because I sent a letter providing them cover on the criminal side. And they did.
As opposed to just going and saying they should
Defund
be
them, take their
defunded.
money. Well, maybe an education institution does need to be defunded because of something they do, but go get your facts. Go make calls, get information, right? Because you can actually hurt good people because you're making a really popular political statement on social media, but you don't have all the facts. And in politics, people are more interested in clicks and getting followers and being famous, right, and being celebrities, and they'll say whatever it takes. But sometimes governing means you have to roll up your sleeves away from the lights of the cameras, and you have to work through things and get things done.
And have those private meetings. Those are the most important ones, really.
They are.
I mean, and it's not, not talking about backroom deals, but just actually making that phone call and figuring out what the holdup is. I'm shocked. I didn't know that. I didn't know that there was that law in the books, and that was why
I didn't
it was
either.
taking so long.
I didn't either.
That's really an interesting. Man, that blows my mind. And now, of course, one of them is suing, so that's fine.
And I told them you could still be sued,
Of course.
right? I can't stop a lawsuit, and I don't know if that suit will be successful or not. But you
Yeah.
won't be prosecuted, and
Yeah.
that's what they were worried about, and they were right to be worried about it.
I would be.
I don't think that law is constitutional because you're having to violate Clemson's First Amendment rights to speak through terminating someone for exercising some type of, violating their community standards.
Yeah.
So, to me, I don't think that law would ever be used, but the prospect was terrifying to them.
Of course it is. Of course it is. I mean, these people are these are professors. These are they've spent their whole lives on the up and up, and now 2 years in jail. That's going to make anybody kind of.
Well, it was the
stutter a
administration that
little
wanted to fire the professors that were concerned, and I wanted, and this goes for Carolina College of Charleston, Citadel, Furman, Wofford, any college or institution in South Carolina should be able to fire a professor at least and not be prosecuted for it.
Right. It should definitely be civil, if anything, for sure.
Right.
So, well, Alan, I really appreciate you coming on again, and we'll have you in next time you're down here. We'll keep rocking and rolling, man. I appreciate it.
Corey, great. I'm excited about your podcast and all that you're going to be doing, and I look forward to coming back on again soon.
Absolutely. All right, guys. We're gonna go ahead and let the Attorney General go, and we'll catch you guys later. All right, guys. That was. Let me pause that. All right, guys. That was the Attorney General, Alan Wilson, who's running for governor. We'll be continuing to do long-form interviews with anyone who will let us, and I hope you enjoyed it. I share this everywhere. Let people know. Judicial reform is a very important issue. We're going to talk to Jordan Pace. I'm going to try and get Mike Burkhold also. He was he's running for comptroller. Very important position, one that's often forgotten. We've had him on the show before. We'll have him on again. One of Doge SC's endorsements, I guess. I mean, that's the way I think it should. Palmetto Revolutionary is what they call him. But yeah, we've got DogeSC.com and DogeSC with Rom Reddy. They've been coming out with Palmetto Revolutionaries one after the other. We've got David Pasco, who we had on last week. We've got Johnny Garman, who we've had on the show before. We'll have him on again. We've had Curtis Loftus, friend of the show, good guy, one of the best and most conservative people in the state for sure, especially who holds office, and so many others. We're gonna try and talk to all of those and anyone else running for office. There's so much interesting stuff to talk about. We never get to it in time, but I thought that this interview, this long form interview, was important for you guys to see. My name's Corey Allen. This is Palmetto Talk Live. Thank you all so much for joining us. Again, comment, like, share this with your friends, and especially people who are going to be voting, right, in the primary. It's very important for us all to know who it is we're actually voting for. So, anyway, my name's Corey Allen. I'll see you later. I have a police report to make about a stalker who's pretending that he's running for office, who has been taking pictures of me outside my office. Weird people, man. Weird people. But I'm used to it. I'm just used to it being leftists, right? Not people who pretend to be Republicans. I'm just not used to grown men, middle-aged grown men, being a stalker. Like, I'm just not used to that. It's weird. Very weird. Saying things like, I'm going to hunt them down, and I'm going to take them out. Yeah, weird stalker people. Carlton Walker, you psychopath. You psychopath. Anyway, we'll see you guys tomorrow. All right.